Pineville was a lovely place to live. It was a small town. The houses were quaint. Everyone knew their neighbors. It was peaceful. But sometimes a little bit of excitement was welcome. That's where the Fantastic Five came in. The Fantastic Five were a group of friends. They were known for their quick thinking and their love for solving mysteries. There was Alex, the brave leader. Bella had a knack for puzzles. She was the brains of the group. Carlos was a whiz with computers. He could find anything online. Dana had a sharp eye for detail. Lastly, there was Eddie. He was always ready to lend a helping hand, and he was super speedy. The Fantastic Five loved a good adventure. They had solved many small mysteries in Pineville. They found Mrs. Higgins' lost cat. They figured out who was taking cookies from the school bake sale. They even solved the mystery of the disappearing garden gnomes. The people of Pineville knew they could count on the Fantastic Five. The children were always ready to help. One sunny afternoon, the Fantastic Five were having a picnic under their favorite oak tree. Suddenly, Alex's phone rang. It was Mrs. Thompson. She was the librarian at the Pineville Public Library. She sounded very upset. Something was wrong. Very wrong.
Oh, Alex, it's terrible. The book. It's gone. Stolen. S4. Hello, Mrs. Thompson. What's the matter?
The Fantastic Five listened in stunned silence. A stolen book? From the usually peaceful Pineville Library? This was serious.
We'll be right there, Mrs. Thompson. Don't worry, we'll find out what happened.
The Fantastic Five packed up their picnic in a hurry. They raced towards the library. They were eager to unravel this new mystery. The library was usually quiet and calm. Now it was buzzing with worry. Mrs. Thompson met them at the entrance. She looked distraught.
It's the Chronicles of Pineville Children, a valuable and irreplaceable book about our town's history.
The Fantastic Five gathered around the empty display case. It had held the precious book. The case looked like it had been forced open.
This is awful. Who would steal such an important piece of Pineville's history?
We need to find out who had the opportunity to take the book.
The children knew this was their most challenging case yet. They were determined to solve it. The Fantastic Five decided to make a list. They needed to think about who might have stolen the book. They knew it had to be someone who had been in the library recently. They also knew that the thief had to be strong enough to force the lock on the display case. Who could it be? The list grew as the Fantastic Five brainstormed. They came up with 4 suspects. A quiet, grumpy man who lived alone. He recently had a public argument with Mrs. Thompson about a book he wanted. An enthusiastic historian and a regular visitor to the library. She was known for her vast knowledge of Pineville. A mischievous boy who lived near the library. He was known for playing pranks and had been caught stealing candy from the local store before. A new resident who kept to herself. She seemed to be interested in the town's history, asking a lot of questions about it. The Fantastic Five knew they had their work cut out for them. Each suspect had their own quirks and potential motives. It was time to start investigating. The Fantastic Five were ready to tackle the mystery. S1, Media. 5 individuals looking determined and ready to solve a mystery with a sense of unity and purpose. We can't rule out Tommy. He's always getting into mischief, and he was here yesterday. S3, Media. Woman passionately discussing local history with a hint of obsession and possessiveness over historical artifacts. And don't forget Mrs. Peabody. She's been obsessed with local history since forever. Maybe she wanted the book all for herself. S4, Media. Individuals setting out to investigate with a strong determination and a sense of urgency in their actions. First, we have Mr. Jones. He's been acting strangely lately, always lurking around the library. Alex decided to visit Mr. Jones first. Mr. Jones lived in a small, cluttered house on the edge of town. Alex knocked on the door, but there was no answer. He tried again, and this time, Mr. Jones opened the door a crack.
What do you want? Mr. Jones grumbled, peering suspiciously at Alex. Hello, Mr. Jones, Alex said politely. We're investigating the missing book from the library, and we were hoping you could answer a few questions.
Mr. Jones hesitated for a moment before opening the door wider.
All right, but make it quick, he said gruffly.
Alex stepped inside and began to ask Mr. Jones about his whereabouts on the day the book disappeared. Mr. Jones insisted he had been at home all day, reading a book. Alex noticed that Mr. Jones's hands were shaking slightly. He also saw a library book lying on the floor, but it wasn't the Chronicles of Pineville.
Alex thanked Mr. Jones for his time and left, wondering if the old man was telling the truth. Mr. Jones seemed nervous, But was he hiding something, or was he just annoyed at being disturbed?
Meanwhile, Bella decided to pay a visit to Mrs. Peabody. Mrs. Peabody lived in a charming cottage surrounded by a beautiful garden. Bella found her tending to her roses. Mrs. Peabody looked up from her roses, her face etched with concern. S1. Mrs. Peabody, hello! Bella greeted her warmly. I was hoping to pick your brain about the missing book from the library.
Oh dear Bella, it's a tragedy, isn't it? That book is a treasure trove of our town's history. I've spent countless hours poring over its pages.
Bella listened patiently as Mrs. Peabody shared her extensive knowledge of the Chronicles of Pineville. Mrs. Peabody's passion for history was evident, but Bella couldn't shake off the feeling that something wasn't quite right.
As Bella was leaving, she noticed a small faded bookmark tucked into the pages of a book on Mrs. Peabody's coffee table. It was a bookmark from the Pineville Public Library. Could it be a clue?
While Alex and Bella were busy interviewing Mr. Jones and Mrs. Peabody, Carlos decided to put his tech skills to use. He went back to the library and examined the security footage from the day the book disappeared. He spent hours rewinding and fast-forwarding the grainy footage looking for anything suspicious.
Aha! Carlos exclaimed, his eyes widening as he spotted something on the screen. He saw Tommy sneaking into the library, through a side door that had been left unlocked. Tommy was acting suspiciously. He was looking over his shoulder and trying to hide his face.
This was a major breakthrough. It looked like Tommy was the culprit after all. But why would he steal the Chronicles of Pineville? It didn't seem like his usual kind of mischief.
Dana decided to investigate the library itself. She put on her trusty pair of gloves and began dusting for fingerprints. She carefully examined the empty display case, the surrounding bookshelves, and even the library chairs. That's strange, Dana muttered to herself, as she noticed something peculiar. On the floor near the display case, she found a tiny, sparkling object. It was a rhinestone, the kind often found on cheap costume jewelry. Dana knew that Mrs. Peabody loved to wear sparkly jewelry. She often came to the library adorned with brooches, necklaces, and earrings. Could this rhinestone be the missing link? Dana pocketed the rhinestone carefully, a wave of excitement washing over her. She couldn't wait to share her discovery with the rest of the Fantastic Five.
Meanwhile, Eddie decided to check on Tommy. He knew that Tommy liked to hang out at the old treehouse in the woods behind the library. As Eddie approached the treehouse, he heard voices. He peeked through the cracks in the wooden planks. He was shocked by what he saw. Tommy was showing the Chronicles of Pineville to another kid. But it wasn't just any kid. It was Miss Miller's son, Ben. Ben had recently moved to Pineville with his mother. He was shy and didn't have many friends.
Eddie listened carefully to their conversation. He soon realized that Tommy hadn't stolen the book to be mean or to sell it. He had stolen it to impress Ben. Ben loved history, and Tommy wanted to be his friend.
The Fantastic Five gathered back at their meeting spot under the oak tree. They were ready to share their findings.
I think I know who took the book and why, Eddie announced, surprising everyone. He told the group about Tommy and Ben. He explained that Tommy had stolen the book to impress Ben because he wanted to be his friend. The Fantastic Five decided to go back to the treehouse together. They confronted Tommy and Ben. At first, Tommy tried to deny everything. But when faced with the evidence and the disappointed faces of his friends, he broke down and confessed. "I'm sorry," Tommy mumbled, tears welling up in his eyes. "I just wanted to be friends with Ben, and he loves history. I thought if I showed him the book, he'd think I was cool." "You didn't have to steal anything to be my friend," Ben said, putting a hand on Tommy's shoulder. "I like you for you." Narrator, media. Ben's heartfelt confession surprises Tommy, deepening their bond as friends in the aftermath of the book's recovery. Ben was surprised. He had no idea that Tommy had stolen the book for him.
Tommy returned the Chronicles of Pineville to the library. He apologized to Mrs. Thompson for taking it.
Mrs. Thompson was relieved to have the book back. She decided not to press charges. She knew that Tommy had learned his lesson.
The people of Pineville were relieved that the book had been found. They were proud of the Fantastic Five for solving another mystery. But more importantly, the Fantastic Five, Tommy, and Ben had all learned a valuable lesson about honesty, friendship, and the importance of thinking before you act. The Fantastic Five knew that there would be more mysteries to solve in the future, They were ready for their next adventure, but for now, they were content to enjoy the peace and quiet of their beloved Pineville.